Hey everyone, how's everyone doing today? Welcome to my Sunday live stream where we talk about photography and what's been going on with me and with everyone else. It's always good to see everyone. I know it's been a couple of weeks since I was last live, and oh, sorry about that. I just been so busy, and I've been kind of rethinking uh, the live streams in general to try to target them more, be more focused, and talk about a particular subject. And and make them shorter, because I put a poll out um, a couple of weeks ago about, what would you like to see more on my channel? And the majority was keep things the same, right? So that would imply keep doing streams twice a week and then cranking out videos whenever I can. And so that was great. I like that. That was a 34% wanted me to just kind of keep things the same. And so that was a little bit of a relief in that sense, that I'm still doing what most of you would like to see anyway. But of course, the poll. Let me pull up my chat window. Uh, the poll is always going to be a little biased because usually current subscribers are only going to be taking it, right? And the second element was you wanted to see more uh, not tutorials, but like let me just pull the poll up, share it with you for those of you that may not have seen it. Let's see. Yeah, I want more how-to videos, like more general type photography was the second most thing in demand, like using flash, maybe how to do landscapes or birds in flight, any kind of photography type techniques. And then more in-depth tutorials, right, was number three. Pretty far behind at 22%. And then vlogs and photo walks and streams had kind of the lowest interest. Um, and I had to pick items that I would be interested in doing for everyone, right? Because, if I'm not enjoying what I'm doing, uh, then, whatever I do is not going to be good, right? So that's what I put out there. And tried to extrapolate the data best I can. I put a spreadsheet together and marginalize the numbers somehow, assuming I could do 8 videos of any one kind per month. How much can I do, right? So it worked out to like just do 2 streams a month and do 2 videos a week. So ultimately it would be 10 total 10 total videos and streams, which is a little more than I'm actually been averaging the last 12 months or so, not counting streams, right? I've only been cranking out 2 to 5 videos per month on top of the streams, which were 8 times a month, right? So I think what I'll do is maybe I'll cut the streams down to maybe twice a month, maybe 3 times, maybe once a week. It depends how much I can put together, because if I can target the streams to a specific subject, like the last few that I did, like I focused on comparing the 75 to 300 against the 300 at 4, or another one was a birds in flight thing. I can't remember now, to be honest. But I think if I target the streams more, I can make them a little bit shorter, because in the comments, there was a lot of great comments and feedback from everyone as well, was um, to make the stream shorter, right? They were just too long. So I get that. And there was a very small percentage of people that said, the longer the better, the streams. Because when I first started streaming, I was thinking, wow, I could do a 24-hour stream, right, with just a couple of breaks in between. But those days are gone. I can't do that. It's not healthy, number one, right? But number two, I don't think I have the stamina to do that like I did when I started a couple of years ago. So, and then, yeah, music sound gear also. you're not alone. I did get several comments about the photo editing live streams. So the live streams will be targeted in the sense that I will be doing the editing again, but I'm going to change that format a little bit. I think instead of just taking everything live and then editing them everything live at once, I will edit several in advance and go over the things that the edits and changes that I made and why in more detail rather than just kind of on the fly. I mean, it's kind of fun for me to do things on the fly. It's very organic in that sense, right? Because you can see my thinking process in real time. But then at the same time, I might I might not articulate it quite as well what I'm trying to say or communicate when I'm doing a edit. And so I'm going to change that a little bit. So look for that later this month as well. So there will be photo editing live streams because that was seems to be popular, and then also the targeted streams for topics because one of the surprisingly I was surprised. Uh, but I watched. I've been watching a few of the OM Systems live streams that they've been doing where they talk about one thing, right? And it's kind of a mixed bag. Some are great, some are just okay, right? So, from my perspective, as a viewer, not as a critic or or fellow YouTuber, right? I'm just watching the stream as a viewer, just like as you would, and so different types of streams connect with me differently, right? I'm gonna like some, they might be great for others, but it just didn't work for me. But that there's a one stream that comes on as Tech Tuesday, where Tim Scott, I think is his name. He's really good. He's really, really good and very smart. And I just can't believe the kind of information he can just pull out of his hat. It's like if someone asked me a lot of the same questions during a stream, I could answer them, but it might take me like, oh, let me check the menu, let me check the manual. I know it can do this, but exactly how, it's like it's one of those things where just it's not always right there for me to access and share. I have to kind of dig a little bit because there's so many things on a camera that we have to remember, and he remembers it all. Yeah, so Sunday seems to be a good time. It's a good time for me because it's relatively quiet, um, in the sense that I'm not going to get any photo jobs on a Sunday, right? Typically. Uh, so that's what I'm going to stick to Sundays, and like I said, mix it up with something similar to what OM Systems was doing, where they pick a specific topic to talk about, and then mix that up with some photo editing streams, but more streams in advance, so that I can communicate more effectively the editing process and why I'm doing the things I'm doing, rather than spending 15-20 minutes on a single image as I used to do sometimes, which is great for some. They love that whole long process, but for I think the wider viewing audience, they'd like a little more abbreviated or more fluid uh, uh, discussion, right? Or presentation of how I'm editing. So that's where the editing streams are going to go, and the normal live streams will be more targeted. And so today's probably going to be kind of the last stream where I just kind of jibber jabber and just talk about anything that comes off the top of my head, like I used to do. I used to just come in, turn on the camera, and just talk for a couple hours. God knows how I do that. I don't know, because some people call me. I have friends that call me, and oh my God, they will talk for an hour about nothing. I mean, I just, oh my God, it's like, and I I don't want to be mean, but I'm just not interested in how your day went yesterday. Like it's like every other day. We all have problems. And then other people, like I met with my cousin, and I haven't seen him in about, man, two months, maybe three. And we got a lot of catching up to do, right? And we talked for a couple hours, and it was fine. And then after about an hour, I left. I said, okay, I got things to do. I'm gonna go run some errands. So it's like the pot calling the kettle black, right? Because I sit here for 2 hours and jibber jabber, basically about nothing. And that's what I want to change. Is I want to change it to be more focused and and more deliberate when I come online and stream. Because well, anyway, there I go. I'm gonna give a long-winded answer, but I'm gonna try and cut it short. Um, and then the streams after the targeted sort of topic or thing, then I'll go into a Q&A. So I'll do a little Q&A here towards the end. So if you have any questions about Olympus cameras or photography, I'll do my best to answer them, but we'll do that towards the end and then wrap it up that way. And the streams, I haven't streamed the last 2 weeks. I just been so busy and I'm just tired. I had 3 photo jobs this week, and one was sort of a volunteer. I did a golf classic tournament charity thing, and it was kind of a spur of the moment. I've never done a sporting event ever, so I thought it'd be a great opportunity to get some practice in and learn how to do it. And since I'm not charging them anything, the the pressure is kind of off me to produce professional results, right? It's like I'm just there to capture the event best I can, and that's going to have to do, right? Because you're not paying me, right? So with that said, you can go to my Flickr page, which I think there's a link over here for it. I posted all of the keepers there, and also I put a video up of the golf classic early this morning. So that video is live now, and there's a link in there if you want to learn more about the charity that they're sponsoring or promoting. I can't remember exactly what it was. I'm so embarrassed. I've been told twice what it is, and I just can't remember now. But has something to do with kids. So it's always a good thing when you're trying to help kids, right? But in the video, all of the video in there, except for the last 2 clips, all of it I shot in RAW, 120 frame per second. And then I just created the video from that sequence, right? Because the new Olympus OM1 has 120 frame per second shutter speed. So that allows me to capture basically whatever that is. It's more than 4K, but I can only upload in 4K on YouTube. Might be 5.7K or something, whatever 20 megapixels of a raw image works out to in video. I never understood that math. You can watch that, and excuse me, and I learned a few things while I was there, because it always takes a couple of tries for me, just like when I'm doing flash photography and I'm trying to get the exposure right. Sometimes it takes a couple of shots to get the exposure correct. And when you're doing events or any kind of new genre in photography that might be new to you, it takes at least a couple of goes before you start to get a feel for what's going to work, what's not going to work. And what I learned very quickly was not to shoot in portrait mode, like this when I'm at a golf tournament, because what ends up happening is the ball leaves the frame very quickly, right? So I need to shoot landscape and a little bit wider stand back a little bit further and capture more of the environment, and then just crop in a little bit more if I need to. But the amazing thing is, sorry, I was reading comments and I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, I brought my M1 Mark III and the OM1. And I can tell you, when you're shooting a golf swing, shooting between 60 frames per second and 120 frames per second is a big difference. It's a huge difference in capturing the ball in flight when it hits the golf club. At 60 frames per second, I almost never got it. I never got the ball in the frame, almost never. Maybe if I got lucky, but it wasn't a sure thing by any means. But 120 frames per second, you get the ball somewhere in the frame, particularly if I would have shot it in portrait mode, in landscape mode instead of portrait, I would have definitely got more shots of the ball in the frame. So let me show you a couple. And and then I'll talk about the video, because I learned a few things about doing video this way as well. All right, so here's my Flickr page, and so this is one of 120 frames or 100 frames, right? So he's already followed through on his swing. This is another golfer's ball, but he hit his own ball here, and you can see I got it in the frame. The other thing you'll notice is there's very, very little, if any, rolling shutter with the OM1. There definitely is with the M1 Mark III. I don't have any of those shots up here, I don't think. But there's definitely virtually no rolling shutter, which is amazing. So it really makes for, I mean, you can see a slight bend here, but that might be an actual natural blend of the golf club itself, when they swing. That may not even be rolling shutter at all. Let me go back. But, here's one I shot portrait mode. It's a little rough. But let me explain why intuitively I thought shooting portrait mode would be the way to go, because I can fill the frame with the golfer and get a little bit more resolution, right? And that turned out to be true, but they're swinging the club and hitting the ball. You want to get the ball in the frame too once they hit it. And that's something that I overlooked most of the time when I was in the field. It wasn't really till I got home and started editing that I realized that portrait mode would have been, or landscape mode would have been a much better way to go. Because you can see this person, he hit the ball, but I didn't get the ball in the frame. I think I got him hitting it. Yeah, like this, right? You can see, again, virtually no rolling shutter. And I love how the grass is flying up. And there's the ball. A little bit of motion blur on the ball, but that's to be expected, right? I forget, what's my shutter speed here? And all the EXIF data is here, 1/4000th of a second. That's the shutter speed I chose deliberately, I think, for most of these shots. So what I did was, I believe I shot in shutter priority with auto ISO. And no, I'm sorry. I believe I shot in full manual mode. So I kept the aperture generally at f2. I was using the 75 1.8. I kept the aperture at f2. I set the shutter speed to 1/4000th, and then I let the ISO do whatever it needs to do. In this case, I got an ISO 200. And I love the fall off of the 75 here. This is the 75 also. Just a beautiful background, and nice separation of the golfer from the background, but not so much so, right? I mean, it's not like it's totally blown out. Like a full frame camera would probably blow out a little bit more. But I think in the context of shooting this kind of event, you need that little bit of extra depth of field so that you get everything in focus on the golfer, right? You want the entire golfer in focus, and then a little bit so you can see the environment that they're in, right? That they're on a golf course, obviously, but you can see the golf course still. It's not totally blown out. And there's some shots where it might have been nice to have a little bit more background blur. This one I probably cropped in a bit, but it would just depend how close I got to the subject. Like this is probably as close as I could get and still get, to frame the shot. I believe this is cropped in quite a bit too. Gosh, let me find one that's not cropped. Yeah, these are all cropped in quite a bit. So it's hard to tell from looking at these pictures. Let me see what size this is. Oh, I resized all these to 1080. So this is a cool shot because over here you can see the little white, what do you call those things? I haven't golfed in 30 years. The tee. The tee goes flying out, and in the video you can see the tee spinning in the air, which was really cool. And but yeah, this is just beautiful. This lens did an excellent job because I didn't have to do continuous autofocus because I was shooting an SH1, which is you fix the focus, exposure, everything, and then you just buffer, right? So there's a lot of good shots here. You can kind of go in and check out if you're interested. I love this, the way the grass is all flying out. That was really cool. And it's just a beautiful shot, I think. Now, I did shoot this one in landscape mode, so I lost the club head. So what I have to do is I have to stand back a little further, but then I'll lose that depth of field, right? So I have to make a decision, landscape or portrait. And on site, I wanted to go with portrait because I wanted to get the entire club in the scene, right, in the frame. But then the side effect is I lose the ball, right? When it goes out of the frame, because in landscape mode I can easily get this in frame. Now just imagine if I had this in portrait mode, I would have to crop this pretty wide, almost back to landscape mode to get this ball in action. And then if I do, the ball is right near the edge of the frame, which wouldn't look quite as good as this does. But yeah, it was kind of cool. I love how the grass is flying up again. So this was a lot of fun for me. Now, so photographically speaking, I'm going to shoot portrait and shoot a little bit wider, like stand back. So a really good lens to have. I was using a prime, right? So I didn't have the zoom in, zoom out stuff. I was using my 75 prime. So I think a 40 to 150 2.8 would have been an ideal lens for this kind of photography, because you can't always predict exactly where you're going to be standing relative to where the golfer is. And you want to be able to zoom in and out to make those little adjustments, because I had to zoom with my feet basically, or crop in when I got into post. And that's as beautiful as the 75 millimeter lens is, and the kind of images that I got from it, it was still limiting in that sense, because there was times when I couldn't back up far enough, right? That's when it was really the problem came, when I had to back up and I'd have to go into the bushes. And then when I got into the bushes, then I would have to start to have tree branches and other things obstructing my view, based on the way I wanted to frame it. There's probably a shot in here like that. Let me see. Where I had that issue. Not this one. This was intentional. I don't know if that worked or not, but there's one in here. Well, I'm not going to dig through all of these, but this is the idea I'm talking about. Is sometimes when I got back, I started to get obstructions in the frame, and I couldn't I couldn't get the shot that I wanted, or a clear shot. So 40 to 152.8 would have been perfect. That'll still give me a nice depth of field at f2.8. The 40 to 150 f4 might do this, but we're at f4 instead of f2.8, right? I know the depth of field is not much difference, just one stop, but when you're working with Micro Four Thirds, you need as much as you can get, much help as you can get, especially with light. Let's see what this shot was at. This was at ISO 200, so I had pretty good light. I was at f2.8 on this one, actually. I must have bumped the aperture wheel. But I still got good separation, good depth of field. So I got everything in focus that needs to be, and then what's not in focus is okay. But anyhow, that's what I learned there, and I might do another one in August. Paid shoot. This was all volunteer. I might do a paid shoot for golf from this event. Someone was interested. So we'll see. They haven't seen these pictures yet, though, so maybe they'll change their mind after they see the pictures, because I just put them up. All right, let me go to the video. I think that's all I can think of, photographically speaking. That's what I did. Well, let me look at the chat. Any questions about how I photographed this event when I was there? Because I just been kind of running off the cuff what I remember when I was doing it. Let me check the chat section. Where's my mouse? Do I have an example of rolling shutter? On the OM1, not really. I might. I do have one. I don't think I have a good example in these golf shots, though. Let me see. There was one swing that maybe rolling shutter. It's hard for me to say. Is that rolling shutter, or is that just the club bending? But that's the closest I can come in this particular shoot. But I do have one other example that's not at this golf tournament. See if I can find that real quick. All right, here we go. So I'm driving probably at 50 miles an hour, and I just pointed the camera out the window and took pictures of these, poles. So when I'm driving at 50 miles an hour, yeah, definitely there's some rolling shutter here, right? This one, not so much, because that's not a good example here. Now this wall was right, I was in the far right lane, so this wall was right next to my car, maybe 20 feet away from the car, so maybe 30 feet away, which would be what, about 10 meters. Driving at about, in this case, I was driving at about 45 miles an hour because I was coming up on my exit. And this is definitely rolling shutter, right? And the way you can tell is if I straighten this wall, because this wall, yeah, that's pretty level. So you can see that I've made this barrier here completely level. So I leveled the horizon, so to speak. And then as you go straight up, you can see the rolling shutter. So that's the best example I have of rolling shutter with the OM1. And I had to be driving in a car to do it. So it's very minimal. You have to really push the camera hard to get that rolling shutter effect to reveal itself. And that's mainly due because of the BSI, right? The backs, not BSI, but the being a stacked sensor so that it's able to have a very, very fast readout speed. Maybe 120 frames per second, whatever the readout speed is. I know it's very fast. But that's the rolling shutter effect. Oh, you didn't know what that was? Okay. Well, I just assume you knew, and you just wanted to see how bad or good it is on the OM1. On the EM1 Mark III, these lines would be very tilted, right? Because it has a much slower readout speed than the OM1. And then if you take a Sony full frame camera, a lot of the older ones, I don't know which ones, but the rolling shutter on those are horrible, horrible even compared to the EM1 Mark III. So it's a huge improvement here with the OM1. Lauren is funny. Lauren is always cracking me up. It's always good to see you, Lauren. I did see your emails this morning with the pictures of the Porsche and the band. Those were awesome. I really love the dashboard picture of the Porsche. That was I just wish they still made cars like that. Hey Adam, how are you? You gonna kids soccer today? Okay, cool. Adam Favre is here. He moderates or runs the Facebook group Olympus Education. I can never remember the name properly because there's so many groups out there. But just search for his name and then his group will come up. And let's see. Yeah, the M1 Mark III, the rolling shutters is pretty good, minimal compared to a lot of other cameras, but it's not as good as the OM1. That's all I can say. Yeah, I'm gonna try and do that next time. Plato's asking, ever think of using a slow shutter speed when taking pics of golfers for blurry arms and swinging? Yeah, to create some sense of motion, right, in the shots. I might do that next time if I get a chance. I'll do that next time. I'll have to mix it up a bit. I think capturing the decisive moment in the swing, and that's the beautiful thing, is let's see. Let me go back to, but you can, when you're doing 120 frames per second, you can kind of just scroll through the different images and find the one that's perfect, right? Kind of like that. And then when you're done, you can put them together and make a nice little 3-second clip. So let's go to the video. So this is a shot that I took in portrait mode, right? So I did it tall. And I was a little bit further back, so I had a wider field of view, but there's two problems with this, right? One is as you can see, let me go here. What I did was in portrait mode is in the video, I panned down to his legs, like so, right? So I was panning down in the video, and the maximum picture width is what? What are these? I forget the dimensions. Let me look real quick. It's 3888. So it's almost like I can still get 4K video from the stills even when I shoot in portrait mode. But I have to pan down so that I can fill the frame widthwise, right? Because 4K is what, 3820, I think, 3820 wide. So I can get 4K video still, even if I shoot in portrait mode. So that was a little bit of a relief, unless I have to crop in a little bit differently. But you get the idea. If I shoot in landscape mode, I get more than 4K because landscape mode, the raw photos are 5,000 pixels wide, right? But less than 4,000 pixels wide, tall, depending, which way I'm shooting. But you know what I mean. So that's what I kind of liked is I was able to uh, shoot in portrait mode, but still get 4K video. This is also a portrait mode shot, but still get great detail, and I can edit all of the images. Because I'll tell you a couple images that I had problems with. Let me find a good example. This is not bad. But you see his hat here is blown out. If I took a little more time editing, I could have brought the details back because I was able to bring the details back on his hat later, but I didn't do it for the video. But a lot of these golfers are wearing white hats or white shoes. As you can see, this hat is blown out, and if I would look really close, I can see I forgot to get rid of purple fringing. The 75 millimeter f1.8 wide open fringes purple, just so you know. And that's a problem with golf clubs that are silver. Like see these silver golf clubs? This one I did defringe properly. I got rid of the purple fringing. But there's purple fringing on the golf clubs sometimes. Particularly when they're swinging. Yeah, like this one I fixed it. I don't see any purple fringing here. But you can see on this one that the shoes are blown out. But if I take my time on a single image, I can bring those highlights back, because that's one of the best things about the Olympus cameras is the highlights really are really good. You can really recover the highlights really well with the Olympus cameras. Much better than even my full frame cameras, believe it or not. Here's another one where the highlights are blown on his glove. And this is a nice landscape shot, so I did frame this one pretty good. So I got the ball, I got the ball in there. I don't know how to advance frame by frame, but there's the ball there. If I go back a little bit, you can see the ball. Well, it was. Well, anyway, I got 2 shots with the ball in the frame, maybe 3. Oh, 3. Yeah. There's another one. So, it was pretty amazing. This is the kind of photography I was never able to do with my M1 Mark III, because at 60 frames per second, I could not get the ball in the frame like this, because I took a few shots with my M1 Mark III at 60 frames per second because I wanted to see how it was. So 4K 60 video would replace this 120 FPS RAW. But yeah, it's pretty cool. Where's that shot with the guy? Let's see. I wanted to show you that. Yeah, look at this look at this little T here, man. This thing is just flying. And this video is at 24 frames per second, so I'm losing a lot of frames, I believe, or it might be 60. But anyway, I'm losing half the frames in this video. When you look at the raw images and process the raw images, that T is spinning in the video. But then when I publish it on the YouTube, I lose a lot of frames. So it's a little bit jumpier. So is the golf swing for that matter. The golf swing is a little jumpy, see? Because I'm losing frames when I publish video. So it's not quite as fluid or smooth, right? And I think that's what someone had mentioned about shooting at 1/250th of a second to make it smoother. But I'm gonna get this right. Like I said, this is the first time I've shot like a golf event or this kind of photography in general. And so I'm learning. I'm learning both in the field how to shoot, and also in post processing how to process. You know, I can think about the processing side now while I'm in the field, because when you're in the field, you have to think about the post processing, right? To get a good overall set of images. If you're just out shooting in the field to capture decisive moments, that's great. But when you got to think about post processing on top of that, you might shoot a little bit differently. So let me give you an example of what I mean when I have to shoot a little bit differently if I'm going to use this technique. And it was actually right at the very beginning. Okay. What I noticed was some golfers pull their club up very slowly and then come down very quickly, right? And at 120 frames per second, you only have about a 90 to 95 frame buffer in the OM1, which is less than 1 second. So what I have to do is, on this golfer, for example, where did I start? I started somewhere with his club just above his head. And then he comes back slow, slow, slow. And then when he swings, I'm good. But see how it jumped a lot right there. His club is over to his right. And then in the very next frame, I wish I knew how to skip a frame. In the very next frame, his club is way up here. So what happened is at 120 frames per second, I ran out of buffer right after he hit the ball. So the club went from the ball all the way up to over his head in one frame. So what I have to do timing wise when I'm in the field, now that I understand the post-processing, what I see in post-processing, when I'm in the field, I'm going to have to wait till they get the club over their head and then start to swing down. Because that swing down is less than 1 second, and I'll capture all the frames, no problem in that case. Some of the golfers, they swing up and down very quickly, and I got the whole thing within that 90, 95 frames, no problem, and I didn't have this skipping problem. So when you watch this video at normal speed, it'll be slow motion as he's swinging down, but then when the swing comes up, it's going to look like it's really fast, all right? So I'll just play it real quick. See, did you see that jump? But this person here, I got it right. It was pretty slow swing all the way through. Same with this guy. See, I didn't start the frame until, how about this guy here? I started shooting. Yeah, see, that happened there again. I started the framing sequence while his club was going up. And then as he went down to swing the club, everything's good. He hits the ball, but I missed. My camera started to buffer, and you can see. So let me just play it back at normal speed. and you'll see at the last fraction of a second, it speeds up, right? It did it there again. Now, most of the clips from here out, I did okay. I was able to capture the full swing. Like that guy, he was very fast up and down. This guy was fast up and down, going up and down on the swing. But you can, if you watch it closely, I mean, videographers will probably pick up on that right away, right? But when you watch it closely, you can see that I pushed the shutter a little too soon. I need to wait till they get the club all the way up and then start to come down. And then I'll get the nice follow through all the way on this side, if I'm going to use this particular technique. I thought I saw a question here. Okay, so John Matthews did 60 FPS and created 400 frame video. Okay, so you slowed it down, and but then you can't get too much movement. Yeah, it's definitely much better at 120 than at 60, definitely. So 4K 60 ain't gonna cut it, really. And let me see. I thought I saw that slow-mo be done using a video editor. Not really. What is my frame per second on this video? I thought I exported at 60 frames per second. Let me check. No, I exported at 30 frames per second. So I think that was a mistake on my part. I should have exported at 60 frames per second. Then we would have had a smoother flow of the golf swing, I think. So that's something I'll have to do a little more research and practice and figure out what's the best way to export this kind of video. But I exported this video at 30 frames per second, and that's why there's a little bit of jitteriness in the swing, like skips. But when I play it back at the full, when I play it back at 60 frames per second, the swing is much, much smoother than what you see in the video. So yeah. Anyhow, that's what I should have done. I might re-upload this at 60 frames per second and see if it looks better. It'll look better though. But at 60 frame at 60p, if you're saying take the 120 FPS raw images and use a video editor at 60p, it's going to look better than what I did here, definitely, because what I did here was 30p. But that's something I didn't think about when I created this. It's only after I created the video and uploaded it. It was like 1 a.m. Okay, and I did probably about 10 hours of editing on this video. At that point I made a mistake, I guess. I didn't think it all the way through. But you're right, John. I think that would work much better. And then David says the M1 Mark III. Yeah, the M1 Mark III does 120 FPS video in full HD, I believe. It may even be cropped. I'm not 100% sure. Even if it's not cropped, full HD is not as nice as 4K, because I can do 120 frames per second in 4K using this technique, right? And if I had framed everything in portrait mode and landscape mode, I could have done 5.7K, whatever that number is, video using this technique. The best I can do now is 4K 60p in the camera, and that ain't going to cut it. That ain't going to cut it for this kind of shot. But 4K is still an 8 megapixel file overall. When I shoot in RAW, I'm getting a 20 megapixel file at 120 frames per second, and I can edit the heck out of that to get it to look the way I want, more so than I can with maybe using a single clip from a 4K 8 megapixel image, which is essentially a JPEG. But 4K 60 is just not fast enough for this kind of event. Surprise! Yeah, I wish they had put the CF Express cards in. Then I wouldn't have as much of a buffering issue. That'll probably be on the OM1 Mark II. That's when it'll come out, and then I'll definitely get that camera. And then my OM1 Mark 1 will be a backup, just kind of like my EM1 Mark III right now. I still use that for work. I'm going to talk about my other photo job today too that I did, because I did learn some things there. Oh, the Vic player, go frame by frame. I hit the E key. Let me try that. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. So now I can go back to this swing. There's him hitting the ball. I got several shots of the ball in the frame there. Isn't that great? Oh, that's awesome. How do you go backwards? I don't know how to go backwards. D? No. E, B? I don't know. Anyway. That's cool. Thank you. Now you just need to tell me you need to tell me how to go backwards one frame now. That's really helpful. Thank you. Let's see. If you were to close the aperture down a little and slow the shutter speed, you may be able to capture more of the swing. I guess you have to be experiment to get an acceptable speed to avoid blur. I would if you. I'm not exactly sure how that works. Using a slower shutter speed to capture more of the swing. I mean, the only thing I can think of with a slower shutter speed is I'll get more motion blur. I don't know how that translates into capturing more of the swing. If you mean use a slower frame rate than 120 FPS, yes, if that's what you mean. But I don't think the options are anything but 120. Let me double check. Oh, I can do 100 frames or 60 frames. Maybe if I do 100 frames per second instead of 120, because I can do that on the OM1. I just checked. I know 60 is not going to work, but 100 might work. That's a good idea. And then the only other thing I changed was I turned the frame count limiter off. Because even if it starts buffering, there may be a frame in that sequence that I still want to keep, right? So turn the frame counter off and shoot at 100 or 120 FPS. Thank you, Richard. I think that's what you meant. But that's, I mean, the fact that your question included the aperture implies you do want a slower shutter speed. So I'm not sure what you mean by capturing more of the swing. If you can elaborate on that more. John, actually, I think if I was shooting at 24 FPS, I could probably go 10 to 20 seconds without any buffering. Honestly, I think I can. I'm actually thinking about doing another video like I did before on the frames per second buffering with different settings, because I get much faster results if I change the settings a little bit, believe it or not, than I got in that first video. So I'm going to title that video, getting the fastest frame per second and buffering in the OM1. Because I was able to keep more images, changing a couple of small things. It had something to do with the JPEG setting. Believe it or not, even though you're shooting RAW, JPEG settings affect your RAW, because JPEGs are built into your RAW images, for those of you that didn't know. So minimizing the in-camera processing speeds up your write times. Any angle rule there? No. I don't know what you mean. Is there any angle rule? If you're talking about video, no, I didn't do anything. I was shooting raw, so there's no angle rule or anything like that. There might be, and that's why my video is not exactly the way I want it. It would be a new concept for me if that exists. If there's some way to incorporate the angle rule when you're doing the post processing using raw images. I don't know. There could be, but I don't want to discount your question. All I can say is I don't know. Did I use auto mode? No, when I was shooting the raw images, I was using full manual with auto ISO. So I set the shutter speed and the aperture, and I let the camera do the ISO. When I was capturing the images, I didn't shoot video. No, R didn't work. I tried. That pulled up something up. Oh, thanks, Darko. I appreciate that. My Instagram account. Yeah, no OM9. Let's see. And I don't have any golfers that are friends that I know of. No, 100 FPS. I'm shooting raw, 100 frames per second in raw. No, I'm not shooting videos, so it doesn't matter how many frames per second you shoot. You just capture it, and then you do the post-processing, and you can export it 30 frames, 60 frames, whatever, 24 frames. 100 FPS shooting raw has nothing to do with video. Practice at a driving range. Yeah. I might just have to go out and golf myself. I don't know. That'd be hard to manage, though. Like press the shutter button and swing the club. Maybe Walter will go with me, but he hasn't golfed in like 10 years either. But okay, so that was the video side and processing. So I learned a couple of things post-processing video. I need to export at 60p and not 30p. And when I'm pressing the shutter button at 120 I'm instead of doing 120 FPS, do 100 FPS, and I might capture more of the swing, right? But still get most of the ball in the frame in several frames, hopefully. Yeah, here it is. Look at this. I did a short clip of the of this thing, 7 seconds. So see how it's spinning? That's 120 frames per second, right? So he hits the ball, the little T goes spinning off. So what did I do that in? Tools. How come there's no information here? Oh, here it is. Yeah, 60 frames per second. So this one I did at the right speed. 60 frames. The video I published on YouTube, I did at 30 frames for some reason. So it's 60 frames per second. I am capturing more of this T. So you can imagine when I was recording at 120 frames per second, that thing spinning around is very, very smooth, right? That T. That's pretty cool. Awesome, David. I'll definitely catch up with you guys on that. You probably golf too then, don't you, David? I don't even know. Nobody asked me about golf. I never ask anyone about golfing, I should say, because I don't golf. I haven't golfed since I was like 25. Yeah, definitely go out and practice. It's not as fast, right? But it's harder, I would imagine, because the frisbee leaves their arm and goes, just disappears. I don't know. That would be fun though. It wouldn't be too different. The difference of frisbee though is yeah, I don't know. That would be an interesting. Everything's a little bit different, right? I'd have to practice a couple of times with frisbee golf, and then I'd probably get it down. Like I said, this was my first event that I've ever done, like of golf, and I know nothing about golfing anymore. I know there's 18 holes, but then I went with Walter, and he was like, "Oh, they're probably playing best ball," and I was like, "What is that?" Or I don't know. He was throwing out all these golfing terms, totally foreign to me. So knowing something about the game will help you be a better photographer. Obviously, that's another thing. Is you got to know the sport, just like wildlife photography. You know the behavior of the animals or birds or whatever, you'll get better shots. So I need to learn a little more about golfing or whatever event I'm going to be going to, so I can take better shots. Right. Uh, okay, music sound gear. We'll catch you later. Thanks for dropping in. Always good to see you. Oh, putt golf. Yeah. Of course, I probably don't need 120 FPS for putt golf. Probably just shoot, 4K video at 24p for that. Let Ellie loose on. Oh my God, Ellie, Ellie would have had a great time on the golf course because, uh, and Ellie's my dog. For those of you that don't know her, but there were rabbits and birds and squirrels everywhere. Right? She would have had a field day. I think the golf swing would have scared her though. She's very oh my God, my vocabulary. Anyway, she wouldn't like the golf swing because it makes that little crack sound. Any kind of cracking or popping sound just, scares her. Um, so I have a great time in the summer when I have the bug zapper on. She just she jumps a mile every time that thing goes pop, pop. Okay, well, any other questions? So let's just go into the Q&A and then we'll just wrap it up from there. Any other? Oh, I didn't even talk about my real estate. I had 2 real estate photo jobs this week too, which was another reason I really couldn't stream. What I wanted to talk about there, and think of some questions to ask me, and I can back up a little bit on the chat if you have any questions. So I had a couple of jobs, but the one job they wanted me to do video. So I brought my Olympus OM1 to do the video. Now, all I can say is the OM1 did a fantastic job, but that's in a bubble. I didn't have my Panasonic S5 with me to compare it against, unfortunately. Um, but on its own, I had no problems with the video that it gave me. I really didn't have problems with my M1 Mark III, but time to time I did. And this particular site was definitely an area that would be a problem for the M1 Mark III because there were some very, very dark areas. The typical, white wall, white ceiling with very dark furniture, and the furniture gets very grainy. And that's where I had problems with the M1 Mark III, was in this high dynamic range scene situation. And hence I bought the S5, right? And then that problem sort of went away because, S5 is a nice full frame and has a wider dynamic range. But more importantly, the S5 can record 422 10-bit internal. So it allows me to grade the footage a little easier than the M1 Mark III, which only had 420 8-bit internal recording. And that was fine for probably more than half the jobs, but not all. Almost half I couldn't do properly. I did them. I wasn't happy with them personally. A client was happy, but personally, I wasn't happy with them. So that's why I went with the S5, and then I was fine. But the OM1, I did this job, and it did a great job. So I'm going to show you a couple clips because this is not on YouTube, not yet anyway. But I can show you this one, and some information overlays. This is outside. Well, all right. Let me back up. So this is outside, right? I'm still using the stupid Panasonic 7-14. So I'm getting this flaring like this. I'm surprised it's not purple blobs. Normally the flaring I get off this lens, they're big purple blobs, but the sun was not shining directly into the lens. So all I got was a little bit of normal flaring instead of the purple blob flaring. Oh, you can see it starting to happen a little bit right here. This is a problem for me. So I got the job to photograph this building, and I got to figure out my post-processing because it's a little bit jittery and it shouldn't be. So I haven't given this to the client yet because I still need to fix this jittery problem. It has something to do with one of my settings in DaVinci Resolve. But this is a good example, right? You know, you have a very bright scene here in the window, and then you have dark furniture, and then look at the ceiling lights. These are not totally blown out. You can still see. If you're shooting an 8-bit video, this would be totally white. You wouldn't see any definition here at all, and you definitely wouldn't see anything out of the window, right? I didn't process this part of the video too well. Let me keep moving. Where's man, why is it jitter? I gotta figure that out, that jitter. It jitters very badly in this room. But see the window? You can see everything outside. You can see all the furniture inside, even though it's very dark. Even this little attaché down here in the bottom. And there's barely any grain, you know, right where my finger is. It's not bad at all. There's a tiny bit of grain, but it's not bad at all. This is exactly what I was getting with my S5, right? And yeah, that transition I got to fix. I still got a lot of fixing to do on this video. But let me go back. I'm coming into this room, and you can see the ceiling lights here. Good definition in the ceiling lights, and you can still see what's going on outside. And just as I can't show you here, but when I was processing this video, I was able to recover a lot of the detail here. Like this is a brick building right in here. I was able to recover the detail of that brick when I was post-processing. Just like you can see over here, you can see this brick building. I can bring those down a lot more in post-processing. So I may do that when I re-edit this, but this is actually good enough, right? And again, very dark furniture and a very bright outside. But let me go right. Let me pause it one other place. But you can see here, because I'm able to record in 10-bit video, I can recover the shadows down in here, all on the desk, down over here. You can still see the texture and detail in this little plant holder and still see things outside. And like I said, I was able to recover this window area a little better when I was editing it, but so I still got a little work to do. But I'll show you one trouble spot that I had. Let me see. It was in the elevator. Yeah, the elevator. Whoops, went too far. The elevator was very dark, and that's where I did see some noise. Okay, so I'll pause it here. Right here. See how soft everything is? There's that stupid flaring from this lens again. But you can see grain over here. And in the wood, there's more grain. There should be. It's not wood grain. It's like noise grain. So I made this clip very, very short. I made this clip only a couple of seconds because I didn't want them to focus on the noise and grain in the image. and then I got back to a normal shot. So basically what I'm saying is that I'm really happy with the OM1, and I have no reason to bring the S5 anymore. So that camera will probably turn into my photo camera, one of my photo cameras that because it's nice to shoot full frame sometimes, you know. Um, it just has a little different look, and it's a little different experience. It's not like it's not like, you know, I don't like shooting micro four thirds. I like shooting everything: film, full frame, micro four thirds, pocket cameras. I like shooting with my TG5. Sometimes I just like to shoot with a full frame camera. And so it'll probably be regulated to that, or I sell it, you know. I don't really need it because I have a Nikon DF as well, which is a 16 megapixel full frame. The S5 is a 24 megapixel full frame, and it does fantastic video. But the challenge I have with the S5 is it's a little bit heavy for my gimbal. So sometimes the gimbal gets a little bit, if I'm moving a little bit too, which you never want to do, but if I'm moving a little too fast on the gimbal, sometimes the motor jitters a little bit, right? And I've ruined footage because of that. It's not a big problem. It's not a deal breaker, but if I can use the OM1, which is, you know, probably 400 or 500 grams less weight, my gimbal is going to be able to work better and more fluid. I didn't use a gimbal on any of the shots in this particular shoot because my gimbal, I don't know why. I bought a new gimbal and it's already crapping out on me. I don't know what I'm doing wrong because it's been working great up till now. I think I'm not balancing it right or something, but I was having problems with the gimbal, so I had to do everything on a dolly. They do have a 14 millimeter lens for the Panasonic, which would be a 7 millimeter equivalent, right, on micro four thirds, which would be perfect. In fact, I bought a wide angle lens for it, but it's an adapted lens. I bought this because I don't have to worry about autofocus when I do video. That's why the S5 is fine, even though the autofocus is not great. For my paid work, I don't have to worry about autofocus. I manually focus. I bought this Samyang 2.8 millimeter, f2.8 14 millimeter. It's a Nikon mount, so I had to adapt it to the S5, the L mount. I only paid $200 for this lens. The 14 millimeter f2.8 from Sigma or Leica, whoever it is, man, that thing is like $1,500 or more. It's expensive. I ain't spending that kind of money on a lens that I'm not going to use that much. So I bought this instead, and it's an old Nikon F mount. I bought it used, but I don't think anybody ever used it. It was still in the box and everything. It was like new when I got it. But so I use this. I just used the hyperfocal distance calculator and set my focus point so everything's in focus in the frame. I do that even with the OM1. Is you know, I turn autofocus off and I just manually focus at on the 7 to 14 millimeter. I can focus at 4 feet at f4 and get infinity focus basically. Everything's going to be in focus from like 1 foot out to infinity when I have those settings. And that's why I like using micro four thirds for video work, because I can get that very low aperture, keeping my ISOs down, and still get a huge depth of field. So everything's in focus is what you need for video when you're doing property videos like I was showing you there. So I got this lens for the S5 to so that I could get that wide angle 14 millimeter. But the problem is I still have to stop this down to about f8 and shoot, and my hyperfocal distance I think was 6 feet. So I was getting everything in focus from about 4 feet out to infinity, which was acceptable. Not as good as I was getting with my Micro Four Thirds camera, but it was acceptable. And because it was a full frame camera recording 422 10-bit, the S5, even though I didn't have quite the same depth of field, I was still getting the same quality of, or excellent video quality out of it compared to my EM1 Mark III with the 7-14 f4. I was getting better video out of this combination. But like I said, the problem I had with this combination is when you add this lens to that camera and put that onto a gimbal, the gimbal, it just jitters sometimes because it's a little bit, it's right at the maximum capacity of the gimbal. Even if a gimbal tells you it'll hold 4 pounds, don't put more than 2 pounds on it, because any kind of motion, and this is, any videographer will tell you, when you start panning and moving the camera around, that inertia of the weight of 2 pounds goes to 4 pounds like this. You go to 1G. I mean, I'm exaggerating. I'm talking about G forces. But when you're moving the gimbal around, the momentum of the motion itself puts more than 4 pounds of force onto the motors, and then it starts to jitter a little bit. So that's the challenge I'm having a little bit with the S5, and getting the 14 millimeter, that really expensive lens from Sigma or whoever. I think it was Sigma. They have a 14 millimeter. It doesn't weigh any less than this combination anyway. And again, I have to shoot at f8, which cranks my ISOs up, which I'm not crazy about. But with the OM1, I can go back to shooting at f4, get a greater depth of field, and keep my ISOs low. So I'm getting just as good a quality as I was. Well, not just as good, but I'm getting very good quality against the S5, to the point that I don't think I really need to bring the S5. And as soon as Photolab 5 supports the OM1, right? Because right now Lightroom supports this, but it doesn't do as good a job when I'm using the 7-14 Panasonic. And what I mean by that is the distortion correction, the optics correction is not as good as Photolab 5 is when I'm using that particular lens. When I'm using, and I know the optics things are all built into the cameras and they're supposed to correct things. But when you're shooting RAW, somehow when I imported these things into Lightroom, I was getting tiny bit of barrel distortion and things that I don't get when I'm using Photolab 5. So my images are just easier to edit and correct, because I have to correct for barrel distortion. It's architectural photography at its core. The lines have to be straight, otherwise it looks wonky. And I can't deliver things like that. I mean, I could. Lesser photographers do. Trust me, I've seen a lot of crap online. But I've also seen a lot of excellent work, better than mine. There's people out there that are so good at this. I do a good job, but come on. I'm certainly not the best, not even close. There's some really good people out there, but there's a lot of crappy people. Oh, and I got to tell you, I'm sorry, Linda, your question was not about the 7-14. The 7-14 is a Panasonic lens. Panasonic makes a 7-14 f4. 7-14 f4 lens. I did it again. I'm not reading the question properly. I'm sorry. This is the Panasonic 7-14. See if I can get the camera to focus on it. This is the EM10 Mark II. But that's what it looks like. And come on, focus. Let me give it the finger. Maybe it needs a little more contrast. It doesn't want to. Yeah, they make a 7-14 f4. I bought this used for like $600. So it's really served me well, and it's paid for itself over and over and over again. The only problem I have with it is that purple flaring that I showed earlier. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, the panty is more portable and lightweight. Yeah, because the Olympus version is an f2.8, right? But I don't need f2.8 in the kind of work that this lens will be doing. I need f4. At f2.8, my depth of field is not going to cut it. I need an f4. At f4, I get the right depth of field, and that's what I was showing in this video. As you can see, everything's in focus from here all the way to the back. No problem. All the way, here's the closest focus point. It's all in focus from here all the way to the back. And I can do that at f4 on this lens at 7 millimeters. No problem. Sorry, I was blocking part of it. And as you can see, as I pan around, again, you can see all the way back here, the exit sign is in focus. The bathroom sign is in focus here. And this counter is in focus. I don't know how to back up. I can back up 5 seconds at a time, but that's why I use this lens. This is why I like Micro Four Thirds for video work, for this kind of work anyway, is everything's in focus all the way from, like I was showing here, the exit sign, this table, this sign here, and the counter, completely in focus. And I'm not using autofocus again. I'm using manual focus, setting the hyperfocal distance f4 at 4 feet, 7 millimeters, Micro Four Thirds. System Mature says the 7-14 is a great lens, but for me, the 8-18 with internal zoom was more suitable. Yeah, that's the other thing is this Panasonic, it's an internal zoom, right? So there's very, very minimal effect on balancing when this is on a gimbal. When you have zooms that come out, this can throw the balancing on the gimbal off. And with the kind of lenses I'm using, it could be a problem. Small lenses like the 9-18 from Olympus, I'm thinking about getting that lens, but it's not quite wide enough for video work. I really need the entire, because what happens in video work, I'm at 7 millimeters, which is pretty wide, but then you crop in a little bit for the image stabilization, right? And then you crop in again a little bit when you're in post-processing for more image stabilization, because I do like double or triple image stabilization when I do these videos. So I get that extra smooth flow when I'm going around. Because when I'm using a dolly in particular, it's rolling on a carpet, could be rolling on a concrete, I could be rolling on a tile floor, and you get little jitters every now and then. And being able to have the in-camera stabilization with digital assist and then do the post-processing image stabilization, and I might do that twice over, or do different methods and different settings. But that's why I was the 9-18, even though it's not an internal zoom, it expands. It's so small and light, it's not going to affect the gimbal work that much. But that's one of the reasons I can't use the Olympus 7-14, is because it's not an internal zoom like this Panasonic. And the weight of that front element coming out would mess up my gimbal balancing. Not that I ever zoom in and out when I'm on a gimbal, but there's that potential, right? If I ever need to zoom in, and sometimes I do, I'd have to rebalance the gimbal to get smooth action again. Oh, see, System Natura says the gimbal was balanced is one of the reasons I bought the lens. Yeah, and me too, right? That's the other reason I'm having mixed feelings about getting rid of this lens. Because I think the 8-25 is also an external zoom, which would be a problem for, it would be great for my still photography, but it'd be a problem for my gimbal work. I'd have to stay at 8 millimeters the whole time and then rebalance if I ever need to zoom. I don't have to zoom in too often, but sometimes I do, often enough that it makes this lens more desirable when I don't have the frickin' purple flaring issue. That's the only problem with it, because it's ruined some shots. It's not as bad in video because you're moving, so the purple flaring moves out of the way, and it's not as distracting as in a still photo where it's just front and center, and you have to edit. Man, I've spent like so much time editing photos from this lens because of that purple flaring. Hopefully, I try to avoid it when I'm in the field, but sometimes, you're in a rush and I get back and I see the frickin' purple flaring in my still images. I get upset. It makes me want to chuck this lens, and just go buy something else. But for now, it's working great. Okay, I use two gimbals. I use my old one that I bought like 5 years ago. It was the very first Zion Crane gimbal that ever came out. Still works great today. I keep it in this case. I bring it to my job, and it comes in a really nice hard case. And there's everything in there. Looks like a gun case, doesn't it? Anyway. And what I like about this gimbal, it uses replaceable batteries. I've never had to replace these in 5 years. But it came with 4 batteries, right? So I got 2 in the handle, 2 more here that I can charge. And if these ever go bad, I can always replace them, right? These are standard 18650 batteries. All of the gimbals you buy today all have built-in batteries. You can't replace them. And then the gimbal itself is this, right? So, like I said, this is 5 years old and it's been working great. So I really like the Zion Crane gimbals, even though they're kind of tricky to put back in the box. But there we have it. And then I have this other one which was giving me problems yesterday or the other day. This is a Manfrotto Bv 220, I think. I wanted to update my gimbal because this is a little bit shorter overall. The height is shorter, so I have less stress when I'm using this on a dolly. The center of gravity is a little bit lower, and it also has a more usable thumbstick for panning and stuff. The thumbstick on the first Zion Crane is a little small, so getting some precision with that is not as easy. It's not a deal breaker, honestly, but this is just a little nicer, right? And the main reason I bought this is because it has a handle, right? So I can walk around with this and have good balance. And that's what got me attracted to this. And I only paid like $200 for this gimbal. It was on sale or something. I said, well, $200 and I get a handle. That'll be great. And then on the top here, I have a little 1/4-20 thread, so I can attach a monitor separately if I want to for other type of work, not for my paid work, but for my vlogging and things. Yeah, I have a lot of ideas for this gimbal. So it's very functional and it's smaller, but I wasn't balancing it right or something. It was being very jittery yesterday. And I don't blame the gimbal at this point because I've only used this a couple of times and it's been fine. But yesterday on a job that I'm getting paid for, the first time I took this on a job, no, this is the second time I've taken it on a job. I haven't done video in so long. I might not be balancing this correctly. And that's why I'm getting the jittering. So I couldn't use it. That kind of was a little annoying. And I wasted 30 minutes on site trying to fix it and balance it, and I couldn't get it to work right. So I ended up just scrapping and said, I got to get out of here. I can't spend more than 2 hours on site. That's just because the clients were there, right? So I couldn't I didn't want to waste their time with me being there. They need to work too, right? Um, so I couldn't waste time just sitting around trying to fix my gimbal. So I just put it on the dolly and went around. And the footage is fine. I mean, the last 2 or 3 video jobs, I didn't do any gimbal work really. I just did dolly and a couple of handheld shots, and it was fine. But if you can get a nice couple of slider shots and fake gimbal shots or jib shots in, it just gives a little bit more polish to the overall video and variety. So I think it looks better, but I just wasn't able to do it yesterday. And that's a big property, man. I was tired after that. But those are the 2 gimbals I use. The low pro bag was perfect. Oh, awesome. I was wondering how that was working out for you. I recommended this bag because what Adam was asking was, what would be a good bag for like just an EM1 Mark III and a lens and nothing else, something like this. This is perfect. But this bag allows you to carry the camera, lens, and the flash if you want, or whatever, as you know, as Adam knows now, right? This is the Event Messenger 100 from Low Pro. They don't make these anymore. You have to go on eBay to get them, and they still charge $50. That's what I paid for this new like 10 years ago, but they still charge like $50 for this thing. And it has all the features I talked about, right? You can silence the Velcro, good quality. As you know, Adam, this now that you have it, you can appreciate everything I talked about in the stream last time, why this is such a good bag for what you're using it for, right? Just a single lens and maybe you can actually do a camera and 2 lenses with this bag, plus all the accessories. And it's a quality bag. It's lightweight, has a really great strap, nicely. Anyway, I won't rehash all of that, but it's a great bag. I'm glad that's working out for you. Yeah, you got rid of it because of the purple. Yeah, the purple blobs. Yeah, when you get them in your still photos, whew, man, like I said, it's not as big a deal in video because you're usually panning and moving, and it only comes in the frame for about 1 or 2 seconds. But man, in a photo, God, I can't tell you how many times I had to sit there and do healing brush and oh my God, it was just. And most of the time, I didn't use the photo if it was in a still shot. But when it is a shot that I need, like the exterior, it usually happens on the outside, and it happens sometimes. I got a couple of shots actually on this job that happened with that lens on the interior, and it was a shot I would have used had it not been for that. But fortunately, I had other shots that didn't have that problem, because the other thing that causes problems with that lens is not just the purple blobbing, but when I use a flash sometimes, I get really weird flaring when I use flash. Not all the time. Most of the time I don't, but sometimes I do. And if it's a shot that I need for a job, that's a problem. So that's why I used the 8mm fisheye Pro for a little while. But the workflow, just that extra step of defishing was just got to be a nuisance. I mean, it's not a big deal, but it was just annoying that I had to defish everything before I processed it. So I just went back to using this. And also it's good for video. So I just need to bring one lens for video and photo. When I was bringing the 8mm fisheye Pro, I needed both lenses. I needed one for photo, one for video. But with this lens, I just need one. So there was more than a few reasons why I stopped using the 8mm fisheye lens. The quality from the fisheye lens was excellent. I mean, amazing. But that extra step was just annoying. And the fact that I had to bring 2 lenses to a job instead of one was also, yeah, the Zion Weeble is really nice. I probably should have bought that, but I don't know. This one should work. I'll try and figure that out today, because I'm going to have another photo job next week. And if they want video, I can always use my old Zion crane. But I like the functionality of this one. I like the buttons. I mean, the usability of this is a little bit better, a little more advanced. Especially with the handle. Man, I could do a couple of extra shots because I have a handle and do them a lot easier. Because with the other one, without that handle, you have to hold the gimbal like this, right? Well, not like that, but you know what I mean. You have to kind of hold. I have to attach something here and hold the gimbal like this. Whereas, this way I can just balance it almost on two fingers. It's perfectly balanced already. When you add the camera, it's going to be a little bit heavier, but you're not holding it with two fingers. You're holding it like this, and you get better control. I mean, these are the kind of things that you look for in reviews, like real world use. But every time I see reviews on gimbals and all kinds of other crap, they never talk about it in the field, really. They say they do, and they act like they are, but they don't really talk about, little things like this. Like how's the balance when you're holding this by the grip or you're holding it this way. They just, all they talk about is like the stupid iPhone app that you can use with this thing and all the crazy crap you can. I don't want to, I don't care about that stuff. It's like, who cares if I do not, I want a gimbal that I can just turn on and start using. I don't want a gimbal that I have to activate with an app or use an app to get anything out of it. I just want to turn the effing thing on and do my job, you know? So that's why that's why it's hard to find good reviews online sometimes, because they're just drive-by reviews. Company sends them the crap, to review, and they review it, but do they really use it in the field? Do they really use it after the review is done? I seriously doubt it. They probably have one gimbal they really like that they use all the time, and it doesn't have to be a gimbal. It could be anything, a camera, a lens, or um, you know, whatever, a tripod, any kind of review. It's hard to find somebody that actually uses the crap for a living to and day to day knows what all the different little issues are, nitpicky things that you want to talk about, like just having internal zooming, right? Yeah, most reviewers, they don't care. They say, yeah, it zooms out, but it compacts down into a smaller size so you can pack it in. That's fine. But I'm using this for a living, and I know I have to use this on a gimbal, right? So yeah, the internal zooming, you know, I don't mind it when it's during the day, right? When she's howling. But man, when it's like 2 in the morning and she starts howling and wakes me up, oh my God. It's rough some nights. This morning she just started going nuts like at 6 in the morning. But anyhow, I love my dog, Ellie. But yeah, there's and like when I reviewed anything I review, I use it. It's something I actually use and bought it because I'm going to use it. It's rare that I get things for free, and when I do, I tell you, right? I said, okay, they sent this in to me for free for in exchange for a review, but I only take products to review that I'm actually going to use. Like I reviewed this microphone because they gave this to me, right? I reviewed this microphone, but I use this thing. That's why I said when they offered this to me to review, I said, yeah, I'll take it. I want to review it because I knew as soon as the review is done, I'll be using this all the time. Same thing with this thing. I got this thing for free, right? I can't move it. Anyway, it's a video switch box, the L2 Plus. Anyway, it's a really nice touchscreen switch box and everything, right? And so I reviewed it because I actually use it, right? So I can tell you all the little things that are just annoying. I try to put a good spin on it, on a product. I mean, I'm always honest, right? But subconsciously, you have like this this sort of rapport with whoever sent you the product for free that you feel like you really don't want to talk about it poorly. You want to point out the problems, but most of the time the problems are within a given price point, right? The crap that they send me all, I get all the cheap stuff, right? I'm not like a huge YouTuber that gets really nice stuff. They send me these things at a certain price point. So you have to forgive any defects in a review a little bit because of the price point, right? You're only paying $100 for something that would cost $200 if you brought the name brand. And yeah, something's not quite perfect. But anyway, if I ever do a review, just know that it's most likely because it's a product that I'm going to use myself and want to use myself. I can't think of anything I've gotten that I haven't used. A couple of lenses I don't use. I gave away the fisheye lens because I have the 8mm Pro fisheye lens. So I gave that to Dave, and I sold off the 50mm 0.95 lens because it was, I don't know, I didn't need it. It was a great lens, but I didn't need it for anything. I'd much rather use my old OM 50mm f1.8 lens. But yeah, most reviews are worth nothing. It's true. It's just, I mean, you try to extrapolate some information that you can use from all these reviews. So you have to watch a lot of them and pull the pieces out that apply to you. Like this guy will cover some of the specs or whatever, and then this guy will cover some of the in the field usage for a particular application. Then this guy or gal, I should say, will cover this part. And then after watching all of these reviews, you do your due diligence before you make a purchase, because $200, $500, whatever you're going to spend, you want to spend it well, and you have to pull all these different things together from all these different people, including myself, right? If I do a review on a product, don't just watch mine, watch everybody's, because I'm talking about use cases that I'm going to use it in. Like I reviewed a different gimbal that I use for my vlogging sometimes. And I don't use the app for that gimbal. I just want, like I said, I just want to turn the freaking thing on and use it, right? But that gimbal had a ton of phone app functionality that I didn't get into, and another reviewer will, right? So if you're interested in that particular gimbal, you can watch mine for my use case, then you can watch theirs for their use case. Anyway, okay, this has turned into a long stream again. I really wanted to keep it down to 1 hour, but I can't do it. I gotta work on that. I don't know if I can do that. I can't apply 90-degree shutter rule to 120 FPS. Export. I don't know. I have to give some thought to that. These numbers are just, I can't think straight right now. I'm sure there's a way to do it, but I can't think of it. Oh my gosh, Ben is here. How you doing, Ben? That was a cool video on that last chip that you were talking about, the gigaflop or whatever it was. Interesting. Oh, Randy's here. How you doing, Randy? Wow, I was just about to wrap up here, so I'm just talking about reviews. Maddie experienced longitudinal chromatic aberration. I didn't see that review. Maybe I did. I don't remember. Yeah, I don't think I need the 20 f1.4. I have the 17-1.8, and the 25-1.8. I mean, getting the 20 f1.4, I could get rid of the other two lenses potentially, but I just don't need to spend money on a lens that I kind of have covered anyway. But yeah, that's what I mean. Like you watch a lot of different reviewers, as Plato's suggesting here. He watched Maddie's review and learned about chromatic aberration, right? Longitudinal, whatever that is. And no other reviewers. Because that's what I mean. There's some things that I'm not even aware of when I'm reviewing a product to look for because it's not my use case or I don't know to look for it, right? So no one person review is, oh my God. Okay, before I go, I have to tell you that Matthew Gasquet, Mirrorless Lessons, just did an awesome review on the OM1. So you definitely got to check out his video. Let me see if I can find the link. It just came out yesterday, I think. Matthew OM-1. Let me see. Yeah, let me put a link to this. Actually, I'm going to put it on my community page too. You got to watch this. He always does an awesome job. Let me type this out. Awesome review iPhone of best YouTube. All right. So here's the link to his what's the name of his channel, by the way? Oh, it's his name, Matthew Gasquet. But yeah, definitely check that out. Oh, I gotta check that out. A ghost orb. Yeah, I saw you posted something recently. I watched your other one. But I haven't seen this one yet. Cool. What's a good Ollie lens for an art gallery? Oh, that's something I didn't talk about. I would say the 8-25 f4. Because at an art gallery, sometimes the paintings are huge, sometimes they're small, right? So an 8-25 has a good zoom range to frame the picture the best, no matter where you're standing. In most cases, if you have to zoom in more than 25 millimeters, you're probably gonna have to swap lenses. I mean, obviously, but I can't think of too many instances where I would need more than 25 millimeters in an art gallery. Because usually you can walk right up to the painting. You don't want to walk right up to it and take a picture at 8 millimeters. You want to try and shoot it, 25 millimeters as much as you can to avoid that perspective distortion. But there are times when there's huge murals or wall murals, you need to zoom out and get the whole thing in, and you don't have room to walk back, right? So having a wide angle 8 millimeters, so I would say the 8-25 is really good. And then really take advantage of the image stabilization so you can keep your ISOs low and everything. But that's the thing with Olympus, right? Is because of the image stabilization, you can use longer shutter speeds and keep your ISOs low because the subjects aren't moving, right? They're just paintings and such and pictures. That to me would be the perfect lens. A good alternative, let me think, because the 8-25 is like $1,000 or something, right? I can't think of another good alternative that would be. That's really the best. That's really the best lens. The only alternative might be the 9-18. It's about half the price of the 8-25, but it's a little bit slower lens on the long end. It's not a big deal for art gallery type work, but the 9-18 at about half or a third the price if you get it used, right? That's a good lens too, I think, for art galleries. Okay, Plato, we'll see you later. System Mature, we'll see you later. Thanks for coming in. And oh, Mike Lane from FR. I don't think I've seen that. Let me take a look. I did watch it because I got the red bar here. Yeah, okay, now I remember this. His results were very similar to mine that he was getting with the birds in flight. Because yeah, it would miss focus on a couple of frames, but then pick it right back up, right? So his review is pretty good. Yes, I agree. I remember that now. Yeah, he talked about the A1 also, I believe. That was a little bit, what's the word I'm talking? That didn't have a lot of precision though, right? He just kind of printed some photos and showed everybody, and people, even very trained eyes and experienced photographers, struggled a little bit telling the difference between photos from the A1 versus photos from the OM1 or Olympus. I don't know which Olympus camera he was looking at. But he was showing very specific pictures of birds, right? And I think in that context, maybe, but yeah, there's a difference. When you got a full frame sensor at 50 megapixels and the bird is only this big in the frame and you crop in, it's a big difference between the two cameras. When you're filling the frame with the camera in good light, yeah, it's kind of hard to tell, right? But once the light starts to drop and you have to crop in like this, that's when the A1 with a 600 millimeter f4, I mean, $20,000 setup, but that's when you really start to see, where your money's going. Is in that low light, cropping. There's just no way around it. And if you're shooting all the time and you have the budget, I think the A1 with a 600 f4 is a better way to go. But most of us, we're more like EM5 Mark III and 75 to 300, like less than 10% of the cost of an A1 with that lens, you can get pretty good results, right? I mean, I can spend $1,500 on an EM5 Mark III and a 75 to 300, $1,500 versus $20,000 for an A1. I just have to be in good light, fill the frame with the subject, and have good technique, and I'll get great. I'll get very good shots with that combo. As I have a vlog on that. But if you're trying to shoot something way out, yeah, it's $20,000. It better get things in focus. I still can't get over how expensive that is. Better get things in focus with no noise at all. I don't want to see one speck. I don't want to see one speck of noise in my images if I'm going to spend $20,000. But okay, you guys, I'm going to head out. Have a great rest of your weekend. It was great being live again after a couple of weeks off. Hopefully, I can target my streams more in the future. Maybe once a month, I'll do a longer stream like this, but I'm going to try and keep them much shorter and more focused in the future. Plus, the other changes that I talked about earlier. I didn't really talk about everything. I talked about mostly the streams, but I am going to do some changes too with the other stuff, more tutorials, more how-tos, things like that. Because there's a difference between a how-to and a tutorial, right? Tutorials are more in depth. How-tos are more in the field. And I can combine that with vlogging, kill two birds with one stone, right? So, but thanks again for joining me today. It was always a lot of fun. I'll see you guys again next time. I'm not sure when, but I'll be back as soon as I can.